are friends who live on mountains.
We are friends who talk good games.
Welcome to our new and exciting, possibly, podcast where Matthew, Carlin, and I, who is on the other side of the phone, I'm Trace, we will talk about something that we want to talk about in video games. That's pretty much as far as we've gotten. Games and how they interact with your life and whatever else the hell we think about talking about. First thing I want to talk about today, this is a very easy question, I think, because it was your question, so you should have an answer.
I have some answer.
That question is, who is the most suspicious video game character and why?
Oh, there are so many of them. What's the name of the guy from the Pikmin games? Oliphant or something like that?
Olimar.
Olimar. What is Olimar doing? And kind of vaguely as a slave driver, Olimar's real skeevy to me. So I think Olimar's on that list. I actually, it's 2019. No, it's 2020. Birdo's not as suspicious. I thought about that for the rest of the day. Birdo is fine. Birdo is just doing, Birdo's thing.
Yeah, Birdo's weird, but Birdo, I don't know if is mysterious. Birdo is mysterious and weird, but Birdo might not be suspicious. What about the item salesman, the one who kind of show up in games in the Neko Cat in Secret of Mana? It's pretty suspicious. He's got something going on.
Yeah, it's pretty suspicious.
He doesn't have your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Which is weird considering that he shows up in the most dangerous places and is the only guy with all the health items. And he also seems to have an understanding that, if you don't succeed, the world might end. And still, he's going to, jack up the prices on armor and candy for you, which is kind of uncool of him. I didn't even think about him. That was a good call.
I kind of feel that way about... sorry, go ahead.
I had two in mind. One, because I was recently... It was probably a year ago, but it felt recent. I was playing that game Lost Sphere, and I didn't think it was very good for a number of reasons. But anyway, there's this guy who joins you pretty early on in the game, and his name is Van, or Vaughn, probably Van. And he shows up, and he's just he just wears a big dark black cloak, and he's super mysterious, and he's basically forces his way into your party. And I was I'm just counting down the minutes until this guy totally betrays me. Because why would why would a mysterious guy in a black coat show up on your team and not eventually betray you?
Spoiler, did he betray you?
The spoiler is yes. It took 30 hours or something, but he finally did it, and I was like, this is the payoff was just not even the fact that it happened. I was he tells the main party member, he's like, oh hey, let me go with you to do this thing. Everyone else, just stay here and wait. I was like, okay. It's finally, none of y'all saw this coming 30 hours ago.
Okay.
The other one, I have a more mainstream character, is Tom Nook. That guy is shady as absolute hell.
Who is Tom Nook?
Oh, Tom Nook is the shopkeeper / guy who you loan money from in Animal Crossing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He owns the only store in town. He owns the only home improvement. He's the town's general contractor and store sales guy.
Oh man,
and banker. Basically.
There are so many shady characters. It turns out. So first of all, if I were writing that character Van, I would have him I would kind of heavily foreshadow a betrayal 6 times until you're again it's and then I would have him betray you.
To really make you think that it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Snape style, I think. The guy from Stardew Valley, not the JoJo big business scary, but the guy running the regular general store, he's clearly ripping people off. That's in the subtext of the game. I think that guy's kind of shady. And I also think not that there's so much like the Neko Cat where they want to jack up the prices, but the toads that are far out with the items in Mario Odyssey, the ones that are on a random ledge. What are you doing on that ledge?
Yeah.
I feel like those toads have something they want to hide, and they're doing it far away from regular life. And you catch them, and they're like, "Oh, I was just out here, looking for items."
Right.
You were making meth in the desert, Toad.
Breaking Toad.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, there are a lot of Who is the most suspicious character in Earthbound?
Oh God.
It's a long list, right?
Well, I mean, it's funny because like one of the first people you meet in the game, his name is Liar Exaggerate, and he is incredibly shady, and he tells you, he says, because you're with like you're with that one other kid and your dog when you meet him for the first time, and like he very like strangely says to you, hey, you should come back here later, when you're by yourself though, not with these guys, which is a weird thing for an old man living in the mountains by himself behind your little quaint town to say to you.
Earthbound is so suspicious. Pokey is obviously suspicious. Ness's dad is pretty suspicious.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, who's the least suspicious character in Earthbound?
Paula. Paula and Jeff.
Yeah.
They're very they're very decent people. And Ness himself is pretty unsuspicious. We're gonna stop there. Those three, not four. Those three.
Okay.
Pooh is
I just want to say
suspicious.
I want to say that Paula is slightly suspicious because she just like comes to you in your dreams out of nowhere and like, doesn't really explain.
That's
all she says is that like she needs your help and you have to go rescue her, and like that could be a trap.
Yeah, it's true. Pooh is way suspicious.
He's incredibly there's nothing about him that's not suspicious.
The point where
he
he
never
just
even
like
explains himself.
Right, the point where he just f's
up.
off and goes back to his kingdom. He's like, nah, I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. They're planning a hostile takeover in Dalam. That's what Earthbound 3 is, or Earthbound 4, or whatever is going to be about. Anyway, we should probably move on to. We had a grand idea for a topic that was not about suspicious characters, but I like that a lot. We wanted to talk about Final Fantasy 6/3. If you have not played. I don't know. We're not using the U.S. number system.
You do the numbers you want, 3 or 6.
Yeah, it's either 3 or 6. It's the good one of the two, though. And what we wanted to talk about is what makes the Final Fantasy VI world, or just like general
the
game story, like relevant in this day and age. Actually, it's kind of funny because I feel like a game that is completely irrelevant now is the real Final Fantasy 3. Like there's no real reason for you to play that game unless you are a completionist.
Yeah, like is there, I mean, never mind even like good game, bad game. There are a lot of good games that, if you look at them critically as an adult, they're very satisfying, but they don't feel very relevant. Mana brings me absolute joy, but it doesn't necessarily feel like meaningful to my adult life. It feels meaningful to the child inside me. Chrono Trigger, not as relevant. The other Final Fantasy V is a Saturday morning cartoon. Final Fantasy VI still feels like a real meaty story that matters to me as an adult. Why?
Yep. Well, there's some interesting stuff, I think, that maybe kind of, we'll go a little bit into that. Final Fantasy VI, a large part of it is about xenophobia. If you think about the humans versus the espers and how I don't know if it's and then there's also Kefka, who is maybe the first and probably the first time I've ever seen a video game character attempt genocide. I guess he did. He pretty much just killed off the entire kingdom of Doma. That was kind of, and then there was a little more. We'll probably have to go back and talk about these more deeply, but just to name some things off. They had like a kind of interesting take on what love is. Terra spends almost the entire game trying to figure out if she's supposed to love dudes. Mm-hmm. That's a stupid way of saying it, but that's kind of and then she eventually realizes when she de facto becomes everyone in Mobli's mom after all their parents die, trying to save them from Kefka, that she has found her what love is to her is not General Leo. Yeah. But it is being a mom to a bunch of people.
Yeah. Nihilism too. It's a story that it's got a really nuanced take on nihilism, where you have a gleefully nihilistic, jokery kind of character, but he pulls a bunch of really otherwise, optimistic characters in a very nihilistic direction when he succeeds. And over time, you see like every character waver in their commitment to really continuing to live or care about anything. And they all kind of have to struggle with that. And I mean, like, kind of one of the central themes is every one of the characters has to find a meaning in the face of that nihilism and the face of that loss. They lost.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy.
That's another interesting thing. It actually shows you, like, you lose. Like, it looks like it looks like a game over screen is about to appear.
Yeah.
And then you basically start over from scratch. And then even after you start over from scratch, like, the main character at that point tries to kill herself. And has to wake up and find a mysterious letter in a raft in a house that she didn't know was there to go do the rest of the game. So it's probably, like, I don't know if any of the other games have really been as adult as that.
Yeah. There have been ones that wanted to, but, like, you and I both love Final Fantasy Tactics, but it kind of bungled some of the same themes, ultimately, where 6 did not.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, like, a different... Yeah, well, that's another good podcast. But another thing that was kind of quite cool about Final Fantasy VI... Well, I want to talk about nihilism more, because, like, Kefka just represents chaos. He represents, like, chaos, nihilism, and, like, and to some extent, like, possibly Lucifer. I don't know. And, like, he comes across as, like, a bumbling idiot who just wants to kill everything, but then as you go along, like, you realize that he, like, super knows exactly what he's doing, and, like, he's probably the scariest person that you would ever come across, because you might think that everything he's doing is just randomly causing chaos in your life, but it's actually kind of, like, coordinated chaos. But he still doesn't have a good reason for doing it, other than that he thinks it's funny. He
follows a lot of the same dramatic arc as some of the good renditions of the Joker, where you the viewer are, like, trained not to take him seriously, and you're lulled into not taking him seriously in the beginning, and he sort of gradually grows into something that you're very afraid of, and earns that fear. And earns it by having nothing to lose, and earns it by having a completely different set of some men just want to watch the world burn. He's very much that character. A scary guy.
He kind of, like, in a stupid way, maybe, like, represents adult life, where you're just, like, trying to go about your business, and for no reason, like,
car crash,
8,000 things are just gonna fuck with you. We curse on this show now, I've decided. And you can't do anything about it. And, like, he's just kind of on top, like, this chaos guy is just on top of a tower, like, oh, yeah, you should get hit by a car today.
Yeah.
While you're going to the airport, you should get hit by a car. That would be a fun thing to have happen to you. And you're gonna figure out a way to get around it. But I don't really care if you do, but I'm gonna throw it at you anyways.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. What does the Empire represent to you today that it maybe would not have represented when you were playing it as a 12-year-old or whatever?
Well, I feel like that is not one of the standout pieces because of how often it's done, and it's not that distinct. But all the good renditions of an Empire to an adult represent the same thing that they don't represent to a child. As a child, you're being trained that you can beat anything, and as an adult, every Empire that you see represents every giant faceless system that you give up on defeating. I've given up on defeating a lot of the companies that I've worked for. It's stupid that I wanted to defeat them in the first place, but, like, I've given up on defeating them. I've given up on defeating grand political systems that I don't agree with. I've given up on defeating super bureaucracies, the DMV. And so the Empire represents this incredible weight of a thing that you are not going to be able to stand on top of. You are just going to have to deal with it for the rest of time. Yeah. And part of why the game is so shocking is because the Chaos character just rips it in half like a toy.
I listened to a podcast earlier today where they were talking about Final Fantasy VI, oddly enough, and one of the guys, like, he's basically supposed the idea that in this day and age you can make an argument that Emperor Gestalt is like an analog to Donald Trump, while Kefka is, like, whoever Trump's mouthpiece of the hour is. I hate that. I think that's kind of bullshit because I thought that Gestalt was like actually a pretty smart and conniving like emperor, and I don't feel that way. I'm with you. I think the empire represents an oppressive idea, not an oppressive person.
I would say you could make a case that he's more like a representation of the capable leaders of the like, let's say, the thing people would like, the beige dictatorship, the idea that you can't really choose a different thing than the thing that we have. You can't stop drones from killing people. You can't stop the post office from working the way that it is. There's someone running the post office and they're fairly capable. There's someone running the drones and they're fairly capable. You occasionally see them. They feel like a stall. And Kefka feels like every one of the wild far-right leaders in the last couple of years who have started off as a clown and ended up as a fire burner. He's not specifically Trump. Who's the president of the Philippines?
Oh, Duterte.
Yeah, and the current president of Brazil. Same deal.
Bolsonaro.
Yeah. They all kind of have a Kafka aspect about them, and they're in. I mean, it's weird. It kind of makes me feel like if I went back and played it now, some of what Kefka did when he tore the world apart would feel very satisfying. Like, oh, I couldn't take on the Empire, but finally wait, that's way too far. Yeah. Which is part of what makes him scary, is like he succeeds where you could not, and then you're very unhappy that he succeed.
Right. You realize that you actually liked working at Amazon. Just kidding. I guess like I never really thought about what I thought the Empire represented. Empire didn't actually seem that important.
Yeah.
It kind of exists, and then you realize Kefka's just insane, and that's the actual bad guy. But if you put yourself in the world, like, that would have been kind of an oppressive thing to have to deal with. I guess you could you could definitely say that the Empire represents to some degree like just the sweeping of Western capitalism.
You hurt my heart.
The Espers are kind of like Espers are just like the labor that's being exploited. Like,
you hurt my heart so badly. Like, do you know who I just realized? Like, after this conversation, you know who I feel like I would really identify with a lot more now this playthrough than as a child? Celeste and Leo. Like, they work for the Empire and they're not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
We're Americans. We work for super corporations. We're kind of stuck in this business. And there's a lot of times we're not happy about it. We sometimes discuss like where the line is that we should draw. And we often acknowledge that we don't even have a lot of power to draw that line.
And a lot of people always thought that Leo was like the super cool guy, like he just misunderstood, he's on the wrong side. But it's like General Leo made a conscious decision to be where he is.
Yeah.
Sure, he has some honor in that he doesn't he doesn't commit war crimes.
Yeah.
But he still would march into your town with every intention of raising it, just because like his boss said to do that.
And he's living well. He's living well. He's at the top rank of an elite system, while other people are suffering.
He moved right into San Francisco in the year 2016. Wow, and he bought a $4 million condo like across the street from Dolores Park, and doesn't really understand why nobody likes him.
That makes me feel good about leaving Menlo Park. Really good about leaving Menlo Park.
That's General Leo, but he's handsome enough that enough people are like, well, Leo's not that bad of a guy. He had a pretty sweet house party last week. I don't know. Like, he always has acid. That's kind of fun. So,
you know what else? It's a very adult story in the sense that it much more directly it more directly dissects like charm and what people get away with and what they don't get away with and why. There are a lot of stories, particularly a lot of like Final Fantasy stories with like a cad and a charismatic general who might happen to, cast thunder into the world. And they don't really explore like why these people are better off and allowed more than other people. But, I feel like a good number of characters, but particularly like Locke, Setzer, and Leo, are not really allowed to just get away with being charming. Other people poke the fact that they have charisma and really kind of, the story asks us to contend with that and decide whether we're okay with it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I have a note that says, why is everybody depressed in this game? Is it because they're just like millennials and they've all like given up on, like, this is kind of, I guess, is like more World of Ruin. But like what you're saying, like even though Locke is just like a charismatic treasure hunter, not a thief, he's a treasure hunter. But he's not incredibly cliche, right? And like Setzer is a gambler, and everything about him like feels like it should just be incredibly cliche, but it doesn't come across that way.
Making everyone mega depressed goes a long way towards making them not cliches.
Yeah.
It deals with depression as well as nihilism. There's a definition of depression that I think I'm going to get a little wrong, but it's kind of my favorite from gosh, what is the name of the comic? There's a lady who writes an amazing like long form comic, and she talks about her depression, and she sort of says that like depression is having a box of toys that don't work for you anymore, and your brain really trying to keep playing with them. Like depression is holding on to something that you really think should have some meaning still when it's gone and doesn't have meaning. And I feel like all the characters are mega depressed because the World of Ruin is a heartbreaking place, and absolutely everyone, including the people who already were experiencing loss, has experienced a level of loss that they never expected. And most of the characters are depressed because for a while, most of the characters are holding on to something that they think still has meaning and that they have to let go. I think no one is a better example of this than Cyan.
Yeah. I was hoping that's where you were going to go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all know, in the World of Ruin, they all find like one shred of something that either they used to have in their old life or like are now like, oh, this is life now and this sucks, but I'm going to do that. Like Edgar pretends to be a pirate, basically.
Yep.
Sabin decides that, nope, life was better when I was... Wait, no, you run into... Sorry, I'm thinking of someone else. Cyan decides that, like, yeah, I'm just going to live in a cave and pretend to be some dead guy and write love letters to a woman I've never met. Like... Yep. Cyan was probably always a romantic guy, so that probably came naturally to him. But, like, it's weird the way he was doing that. And I'm trying to think of some of the other examples, but...
What did Sabin do in the World of Ruin?
Well, you find him... So that's the thing. Like, I for a second I wanted to say, oh, he just went back to the cave and started training. But no, like, you find him right away. He's holding that house up.
Yeah.
The first town you get to with Celeste by yourself, you arrive and the town is on fire, and Sabin is somehow holding up an entire house by himself. And you have like 5 minutes to go inside and rescue like the children from the house. And then...
that really says a lot about his character. Like, not just that he's a man of action, but that he copes with the grief by trying to help. Yeah. I forget what was Realm like when you found her in the World of Ruin.
Realm was she was found by that really... So there was that one town that was pretty much completely intact. It was a really wealthy town. Mm-hmm. The name I can't remember, but she was basically contracted by the super rich guy in town to just paint for him. And then they found there was that painting that she was working on. It was like possessed by a demon, and she like couldn't stop working. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. She was basically...
Wait, would it be fair to say that she was that entirely involuntary, or is it fair to say that she kind of like willingly rabbit holed into art?
Oh, I think that's very fair to say.
That's another like famous way of coping with depression and loss.
Yeah. And for her, I guess that turned out to be lucratively...
Yeah.
A lucrative thing to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I don't know. Who is... I mean, like, Strago joined a cult.
That's another way of coping with.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all. I mean,
Shadow...
it's basically like an exploration of coping mechanisms with great loss. That's why it's relevant as an adult, because when you're an adult, you have experienced great loss. People have died in your life. Your apartment has been flooded. You've had to give up on some dreams. And so this story about like 10 or 20 odd people coping with an incredible loss is gripping and honestly like cathartic.
So then the end of the game, you defeat chaos.
Yeah. That's basically just the Final Fantasy version of the choose life speech at the end of Trainspotting. Or beginning of Trainspotting, I can't remember. But yeah, it's choose life. That's basically just I choose to find something good.
It's kind of acceptance and finding your little your group of people to survive Hell World with.
Mm-hmm.
Because they still have to rebuild after that, or whatever they do. Who knows what they do? Yeah, they might just go back off and not talk to each other for the rest of their lives.
I think there's some of that.
Like Gao doesn't care anymore. Gao doesn't even know why he was there to begin with.
I don't think anyone's. Yeah,
no one really missed him.
In the version where is there any version where Shadow survives? Shadow survives in some versions of the
final, right? You can survive. Yeah. Shadow can survive in any. Shadow only does not survive if you choose to let Shadow not survive.
I don't think anyone's talking to him though, or certainly not getting much of an answer. Yeah.
No, yeah, like someone might try for a week and then they're like, Shadow's just gone off the rails, man. There's a group chat that Shadow just like one day it just says like Shadow has left the room, and then everyone's kind of like. And then finally somebody, like probably Edgar, is like, fuck man, I had money on him doing that months ago. Like, I can't believe that it took that long. Like, I just lost like 100 gil to Setzer. Here you go, asshole.
All right, I think we should probably wrap up.
Yes. So we have been the friends, and we have been talking on the mountains.
We have. We like good games.
And we'll hopefully do this again soon.
Yeah, excellent. All right.
Bye.
Bye.